Lately, there's been a lot of talk about demons and things being demonic, and everything is demon this and demon that. And I find it very interesting. And in fact, in March, J.D. Vance was asked about extraterrestrials, UFOs, and extraterrestrials. And his response was, I don't think they're aliens. I think they're demons. So tonight on Thursday Night Live, we're going to be exploring the whole concept of demons, the title being Are Ghosts Demons? Tonight on Thursday Night Live. Hey again. Good evening. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Thursday Night Live. I'm so glad you tuned into the show today. You know, this was not a planned topic, but after I heard that comment from J.D. Vance, it just made me kind of shake my head as to why would people just have this mindset? But it reminded me of a radio show that I did years ago, and it was a ghost show. I mean, that was the guys' things. They were ghost hunters. They had a show about ghosts. And at one point, fairly early, maybe about halfway into the show, one of the moderators said, well, all ghosts are demons. And I responded, so what you're saying is that when you die, you either go to heaven or you go to hell. And anything that you might see on the planet or interact with on the planet are demons? And they said yes. And it kind of left me really a lot speechless, because how do you really have a conversation about ghosts if they're all demons and they're all demons? I don't know. I had nothing. So it became a bit awkward, and I watched the clock for the rest of the night. But if you sit there and explore our world, there are multiple kinds of beings that inhabit our world that are outside of our senses. And they come in all shapes and sizes. You know, so I might refer to them as beings or entities or non-corporeal dead people. I don't know, kind of depends on the story. But I just wanted to talk about some different ones that I've encountered, and talk about their look and feel. So we're all going to be start here. So not all ghosts are stuck in either heaven or in hell. They can travel about. Now, how they move around, I don't know. You know, there's no time space for them. They can be here, they can disappear and go be somewhere else. That's just how they fly. You know, and so when you have those moments where you feel like your mom has come to visit you, you know, and you just feel her presence and maybe smell her perfume. Is it your imagination, or has your mom come to visit? I remember at one point in time, I was moving into a new house with my husband, and we just literally were moving around the corner from one house to a different house. But this house we bought. And so it was very exciting. We gave ourselves like a month to get everything moved, because we were moving a block. And so we would like pack a bunch of boxes and put them in the car and take them to the new house and then unpack them. So at that point in time, the kitchen table was already at the new home location. And I'm unpacking dishes and putting them into cabinets. And I see this man sitting at the kitchen table. And my impression of this man was of my husband's dad, who was dead. Okay. Who was dead. And I was like, hey, if your dad was in the house, would he be sitting at the kitchen table, drinking a cup of coffee, smoking a cigarette? And he's like, well, my dad, because they were rancher cattle people, was always out working on the ranch and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, 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 no. If he was in the house, would he be sitting at the kitchen table, drinking a cup of coffee and smoking a cigarette? And he goes, well, yeah. And I'm like, he's here. Was his dad a demon? I don't think so. I think his dad came because he was very excited for his son in, buying this house and being with us as we were celebrating this moment together. Then, years later, a different husband, because I've been married too many times, was dying. And he had a hospital bed in the living room. And so many of you are familiar with my little poodle with the tinfoil hat. So that's Bitsy, the poodle with the tinfoil hat, the superstar. Anyway, so it was when she was still alive, but she was like not a very ambitious dog. And she slept a lot, even when she was a puppy, and laid around and really didn't do anything. And so usually someone would like come to the door and come in the house, and then she would lift her head and go, oh, somebody's here. I think I need to bark at him. Anyway, so for some weird reason, she would get up like he was there. She would get up and go to the front door and bark 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 and bark, to the point that I was like, look, there's no one there. And I would open the door and then close it. So when this happened the third time, so this is like within 2 days, when this happened the third time, I was like, maybe there's something going on. And I opened the door and I looked, and there were all these people standing outside my door. I mean, obviously invisible, non-corporeal people standing outside my door. So I kind of propped the screen open. I'm like, come on in. And then I looked around my house, and it was kind of jam-packed with people. I mean, obviously non-corporeal, invisible dead people. But were they demons? I don't think so. I believe firmly that they were there to support him in his transition. I mean, it brings me to tears sometimes when I share this story. And so that's one kind of ghost, is that they live wherever they live and they come to visit you. Okay. So these ghosts, obviously, they take on human form. Sometimes a ghost, an active ghost, will be connected to a location or to a person. I joke around and I say that they speak human and not Klingon, and I will come back to that concept here in a second. But some ghosts that you encounter are... So some of these ghosts are earthbound spirits. And so these individuals, they died. And as you saw in the movie Ghost, they never went to the light. They never made that transition to the other side. So they're attached to the earth. Those are the ones that are usually attached to a location and are trapped, usually by their own fears. And many of those can be a wolf in sheep's clothing. Don't know. Not all the time, but many times, because many times they're afraid to transition into the light because they've lived such a bad, evil existence in this lifetime that there's fear about, well, what's going to be there for them on the other side. But that's not it. Ghosts don't only appear in human form. I have encountered alien ghosts, and so they might have, humanoid form, like I interacted with this ghost that I called the devil guy, who was trying to, in essence, this took like 3 sessions to finally get to this. He was trying to get her to commit suicide, which she did confirm. She did attempt twice. But when you get into these alien entities or these alien beings, because if you make the assumption that humanity is the only life form in this universe, then you're not going to have Klingons, you're not going to have Romulans, and you're not going to have Ferengi, you're not going to have any of these guys because there's only human. But if you open that door up that there are other beings, whether they take on corporeal form or whether they are living in a different dimension that are not in what we would perceive as physical form, it kind of opens the door to a whole lot of things. And I'm going to assume that with those beings, that there are some that are not that nice and pretty narcissistic in who they are. But what's interesting is when you try to interact with these beings, and I said before, they don't speak human. And so regardless of where we live on the planet, regardless of the culture we were brought up in, regardless of the language that we speak, there is a humanity about us. We all understand pain. We all understand happiness. If we smile and we project joy, that is recognized universally around the globe. But if you're interacting with an alien species, a non-human species, they don't have the same cues. And we don't have the vocabulary, their vocabulary, to be able to translate their emotional space. And so they can become kind of challenging to interact with, but they are there. Are they demons? I don't think so. I just think that they're non-human beings. Then it gets even more interesting. Then there are the interdimensional beings. Okay, so when I talk about the alien ones, I mean, they're kind of like the other ghosts. They can come and go, as they please. But then there are the interdimensional ones. And these are interesting because whenever you're interacting with an interdimensional being, they always travel through like a vortex. And so I think this story exemplifies this whole concept. So I had a client who was complaining, and I don't really even remember what her original complaint was about. And I'm talking to her, and I see like this, and I'm like, girl, you got all these like dragonfly bug things in your space. And she goes, I know. And I started looking at them, and these little portals would open up on the outside of her auric field, and this bug would fly in and kind of fly around her for a while and fly out. They were driving her crazy because it wasn't just one bug. I mean, thankfully they didn't sting her, but it wasn't just one bug. It was like 2 or 3 bugs at the same time. They were incessant. They didn't stop her. They didn't stop. There was not one vortex. Like, I've worked with a lot of people that they have one vortex, and over time, as they interact with this being, the vortex gets bigger and they reinforce the edges, so it's harder to close the vortex down. Hers were just popping open, boop, 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 boop. And this is me trying to catch the bugs. And so at one point, I kind of like killed all the bugs, and then I stopped doing that, and the bugs all came back. So I really didn't know what to, I didn't know what to do with that. Really didn't know what to do with that. But wait, there's more. Okay, let's see. So let's talk about demons. All right, so I can't read that. So to me, demons are some of the most narcissistic type, and I'm going to say ghosts, that are out there. All they want to do, I mean, if you have an attached entity, and many earthbound spirits, they're mean and nasty, and they want to control and manipulate, period. But ones that I put into the demon category are like, it takes a lot for me to put somebody or a thing into the demon category. But one of the areas that I really draw a hard line around is if the entity actually enters into your physical body. And so these beings, these borderline demon beings, because they really are out there wanting to manipulate and control you. And so, but if something happens and your energy gets dropped down, or you participate in an addicting behavior that changes your internal vibration, then the entity can come into your auric field and influence you with its narcissistic control things, because really what it's doing is it's feeding off of your emotional energy, So it's really bad, but they're not there 24/7. So you can be a really nice person until you have the entity there, and then you can become a jerk. Where I call it like a definite demon is if the being takes over the physical body. So in ghost terms, it would be considered, something like, you need an exorcism, because you are being possessed. And in those instances, these beings discount your autonomy and actually come into the physical body and take over control over you. And so to me, these guys are demons because they are awful, awful, awful. Would you call the last group that I talked about, these really narcissistic ones, demons? There have been a few that I would put really on the line. Not that they entered the physical body, but they were just nasty, nasty. And I don't work with demons. That is just not my thing. I will work with an entity attachment. I will work with a lot of stuff. But then there becomes a line where they are so sociopathic that it takes a different kind of intervention to address them. And so they could be that earlier group. And so, I don't know, maybe demon. But the cases of demons actually, or beings entering into the physical body, is actually pretty rare. I've only encountered, I'm going to say 3 instances, 2 for sure. And so here are these stories because they're really kind of interesting. And so I have a good friend who is a demonologist. And so I can't remember. It's the newer Russell Crowe movie where he's a priest and an exorcist. So I watched that movie and it reminded me of my friend so much, because he just is like, get out of here, and he just is not affected by their energy. Anyway, so I had this lady call me and she was concerned because she really wasn't understanding what was going on, and she was having these weird experiences, and she would like look in the mirror, but it didn't look like her. And I'm thinking like, okay, a little crazy here. Until her entity presented itself to me. And it was just a nasty, like so nasty that I referred her to my friend. It was that nasty. And so, I referred her. I thought it was a done deal. Didn't really think about it. And then about 3 weeks later, I get this phone. Oh, and this woman, she was older. She seemed very meek. She seemed very frail. She seemed very afraid. Very afraid. So again, 3 weeks later, I get this phone call, and the voice on the phone said, "He never called me." And I was like, holy crap. And I was like, okay, because I knew exactly who it was. And I said, you know what? I'm going to hang up the phone and I'm going to call him up. And you do this stuff long enough and you have friends that do this kind of work, you can just have like these really off the wall conversations. And I got him on the phone and I'm like, hey, her entity called me up. I think you need to call. So that was kind of funny. I mean, in a really weird, I mean, it was a little scary. But this one was even like creepier. So I was working with this guy, and so he acknowledged working with a spirit. And the spirit was giving him information, and he was supposed to be getting all of these like psychic tools, except he would go talk to his friend, and the friend would end up with the psychic tool and not him. And he was really jealous and didn't understand why he wasn't getting all of this stuff. I mean, there was this big ego competition thing going on between himself and these other people that were his friends. And it was different. And finally, the spirit presented itself, and it was this woman. And she looked very nice. However, she was using, and I'm going to say sex. So the image that she showed me, and I'm going to try to make this as least graphic as I can, was that she was on her knees taking care of some business for him. How's that? And she was using that energy to control him. And so I asked him, was she doing X? And he confirmed that that's what she was doing. And I said, well, she's just doing that to keep you enticed and keep you lured in and keep you engaged in this whole thing. And he goes, well, but our contract ends on July 16th and stuff, whatever. And so I said, well, why don't we just hold off? Because he booked 3 sessions. This was like session number 2 that I discerned her. And when we get to that last session, or you're done with your contract, we can meet again and we can kind of follow up on what's going on. And he said, great, that's fine. So in the last session, he was talking about that for some reason he went to the mall and he was there for like 8 hours, but didn't really remember like 4 hours of the time he was there. And he really didn't know why he was at the mall. And so when he's telling me this stuff, and it just, other than she's there. Oh, and in between session number 2 and session number 3, I talked to my friend. He was like, she is trying to lure you in to take him on as a client so she can attach to you through your curiosity to him. And I called my friend because she gave me the creeps. Wolf in sheep's clothing. She looked just fine and kind of angelic, but the vibe that I got off of her was evil, evil, evil. Anyway, so I'm talking to him, and then all of a sudden I'm talking to this person, but she's referring to my client in third person. And I'm like, well, who's this? And she said, well, this is Angela. And so now Angela, the spirit, is having a direct conversation with me, talking about the guy. And so that was just weird and interesting. And so I said, well, maybe you can put him back on. And she put him back on, and he said, yeah, I'm standing over at my mirror and I don't know how I got here, and and he was basically having missing time. And I felt kind of bad about it, but I said, well, I was just having a whole conversation with Angela and she was telling me all of this stuff. And, you're not remembering the time that Angela is kind of in charge over here and you're not. And that was kind of where it got left. Very interesting case. Something that part of me really wanted to pursue. But then there was another part that it was like, you don't want to get messed up in that energy dynamic. You don't. Anyway, so I'm coming back to the question, are all ghosts demons? I don't think so, but perhaps the lack of understanding that many people have about what ghosts are, or the great array of beings or non-corporeal entities that live in dimensions that are outside of our awareness, if they had more understanding of this, then maybe their opinion of what demons are would change, or the nature of ghosts would change. So that's our topic for today. That is our topic for today. So before I kind of open up the lines, I just want to remind people that if they would like to schedule the private consultation with me, please, where's my thing? Please go to soulhealer.com. That's soulhealer.com, and drop me a line and we can set up a time for a private consultation. If you are watching this show on Substack or Rumble or BitChute or TikTok or wherever this is being posted, Spotify, and you want to join the live event, please go to my YouTube channel, and that is Just Energy Radio on YouTube. That's Just Energy Radio on YouTube, 7 p.m. Central. Click the live link and join the fun and get a free on-air psychic reading from me. I mean, unless you go to soulhealer.com and schedule a private consultation there. Okay, so here are the rules of engagement. If you would like to get a reading, put it in the chat. Hey, Dr. Rita, I would like to get, wait a minute. Hey, Dr. Rita, your hair looks amazing. I would like to get a reading. And then provide me with a number between 1 and 3. And that number is how many times I will shuffle the cards on your behalf, and then pick a card to do the reading with. If you find that the line is really long, you can jump the line and be the next person in the queue by going to soulhealer.com/live. And there are 3 things you can do there. You can jump the line, which will move you up to the top. If you have a personal question you would like to ask, so I am just offering general readings. So if there's something burning in your heart and you need clarification on, ask Dr. Rita. You can do that at that location. And, you know, while you're there, if you're finding value in the topics that I'm talking about, or, you know, you get a really great reading, you can always go there and leave me a little something in the tip jar. All righty. So let's see. So tonight, ERRT Radio, you are number 1. And he says, happy Thursday, Dr. Rita. Your hair looks amazing. See? I hope you're having a great day. ERRT Radio, it's been a good day. And then he says, may I have a reading number 3, please? Thank you. And ERRT Radio, you sure can. So yesterday I did a reading for a friend that I've known, like friend, not like super close friend, but friend that I've known for years. And because of a health concern. And I think she was a little bit blown away because I'm going, well, you know, here, well, if you push over here, does it hurt really bad? Well, what about over here? Yeah. It was kind of cool. It was pretty validating. Okay, ERRT Radio. Let's see. All right, and that's your card for today. Okay, interesting. So ERRT Radio, I feel like you are... All right, there's 2 different things going on, kind of. So I feel like there is stuff going on around you. So I don't know if it's like what's going on in the world that is kind of getting you stoked up, you know, or if it's more in your area, you know, or in your circle of people that is getting you stoked up. That's a little unclear on this cursory look. All right, bear with me. It's lozenge time. Okay. But I feel like you are noticing that your energy is being affected. And I feel like one of the things you are working on, okay, so this is an active thing right now, is how do I sit there and have a boundary around my energy, but am also able to look and interact with what's going on. Now, whether you can or not, I don't really have an answer. I think this is kind of an experiment for you to try. We would love to hear how that works for you. But it's always good to, if we make an observation about this is going on with me, or this is what I'm noticing, this is the pattern that I'm noticing. Is there something that I can do to change it? And so, maybe what you notice is this pattern, but I feel like you are trying to play around with ways of making that change. And so whether it changes or not, and that's really not something to beat yourself up about at all. I think the bigger part is making the observation and then deciding, maybe I should be doing something about that. I think that of the two, that's in this moment, the bigger part. So yeah, we'll love to hear how that works out. All right, let's do that. All right, let's see who's next. We have Christine. Hey, Christine. Hello, how are you doing? I'm doing great. May I have a reading number 3, please? And thank you. You sure can, Christine. Okay, and that's your card for today. So, Christine, I guess how I want to phrase this is like your blood really wants to boil. I feel like there's something festering inside of you. I think it's interesting because I feel like what it is just so unimportant, but it's still like getting a lot of charge out of you. In the same breath, when I look at your energy, it's like you're not breathing, you're not grounding, you're not being mindful of being kind of swept away, and it could be a passion. I just am noticing this fire there, but also you not being here in the present moment. I feel like you're not being grounded in this moment. So I offer to you to just stop for a second. Everybody, just stop for a second and close your eyes. And let's just take a nice deep breath. And just all come back to now. Okay, great. All right. Unar. Hey, Unar. And as always, everybody, if, what I'm saying to you is resonating with what's going on in your life, I would love to get the feedback from you. 2. Unar is a 2. All right. All right, Unar, and that's your card for today. Okay, interesting. So, Unar, I get the impression that there's a situation, a person, a thing, something that you're just done, and I feel like you have decided that this is the direction I'm moving in. This is where I'm going. I am not turning around. I am not going back. I am not going to be in that energy or be in that dynamic anymore. I feel like it has been a step up for your integrity and self-respect and self-worth. And so I don't know what this is about, but I feel like it is kind of like a new phase for you. But there is just such a directness and intensity to it that it was just kind of like, boop, you had this insight or made this decision and you're done. You're not going back on it. And you'll never go back on it, ever, 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 ever. But I also feel like this decision is kind of putting you into another little phase in your life, like a transition period for you. And transition periods can sometimes be a little bit bumpy. So if it feels a little bit bumpy or you're not really sure what you're supposed to be doing or feeling uncertain, that is always tied to transition periods. So good job. And it feels good. It feels good to me. It feels like a step up. Dawn, it's Dawn. Hello, Dr. Rita. I'm here, but not. Could I get a number 1 reading, please? I hope you're in good spirits. Dawn, I am in great spirits. I hope you're in good spirits. I mean, not like non-corporeal ghost, dead people spirits, but in a happy mood. I hope you're in a happy mood, or at least content. All right, Don, there's your card for today. So this is interesting, Don, and I'm not sure why this is coming up, but I feel like you're in a place right now where you're just not sure what to do. I'm going to kind of tie this into some old energy. I feel like there was so much of your energy tied up in negative thinking and, kind of being victim energy, and that just really tied you down and made it so that you couldn't move forward. And now I feel like you're noticing this space of like, wow, I could go do that and the world won't come to an end. And I can try to do that and the world won't come to an end, or it maybe won't come to an end. How's that? It maybe won't come to an end. Like there's a possibility it won't come to an end. And I feel like there's this room, but now you're like, I don't even know what to do with it. And so that's an interesting place to be. I suggest when people hit that dynamic to either let it just sit and ask spirit, hey, what would be fun for me? Or what am I interested in doing? Or perhaps, try some of this and try some of that. You don't need to make a decision. You can use this time to explore and go back to kindergarten and play. And I think for you, Dawn, that is the most important thing, is for you to play, to learn how to play, and to bring some of that play, that kindergarten childlike energy into your life. All right, let's see. And it's Yvonne. It says, hey, beautiful Dr. Rita, can I get a reading number 3, please? And you sure can, Yvonne. All righty. I need to do that. All right. All right, Yvonne, let's see what the cards got for you today. Interesting. All right. So that's your card for today. So Yvonne, I feel like you are yet in another cycle, in another phase. I feel like, there. Okay, so I'm going to address this in a very different way. So I'm kind of noticing, and I noticed a similar pattern in Miss Amy that we talked about like a year ago. But I'm starting to kind of notice this pattern with you, is that you kind of get an idea and then you put all of this energy behind it, and then it's not manifesting, or there's something, it's not feeling right or whatever. And then you have to like go through this cycle of letting that energy go. And I feel like you're in another period of needing to let the energy go so that you can plant new seeds, so that you can like kind of recreate yourself again. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I mean, letting go and creating, that's a great thing. But what I want to bring up is this cycle, because it seems like in the past 6 months in particular, that you have been cycling quite a bit. So maybe spend a little time to look at, meditate on, do some journaling about this cycling. And now that I'm mentioning it, I'm betting you're going, yeah, I kind of have been, because maybe there's an answer, not about the cycling, but about the bigger picture that's tied to this whole thing. Because I feel like it's always been about, well, what do I want to do? How do I move forward? Like that's always been kind of the question. And you have this energy and then it cycles back. And so I don't have an answer to you in this moment, but I'm raising the question for you because I feel like there's an answer. It's a pattern. And when we have a pattern, sometimes we have to shift and change and break the pattern so that we can move forward. Okay. All right. And then Pearl's here and she says, hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Rita, for what you do each Thursday here. It is a delight. May I please have a reading with a 2? Thank you. Well, you sure can, Pearl. And just for everybody, if you love what I'm doing, you could go to soulhealer.com/live and leave a little something in the tip jar. And I'm just going to mention, so I am really not through the line. And there's a lot of readings left, and there's 15 minutes. So if you want to get your reading in today, you might want to go there and jump the line. Just saying. Okay, so let's go back to here. And we're doing Pearl, a number 2. Okay, Pearl, let's see. So we just had this card, but it's back again. So Pearl, this is interesting. So this is kind of like a long cycle that has ended for you. When I go back in time, and I'm going to say a year, 2 years. I mean, we're talking not last week, that you experienced like some significant pain and disappointment, maybe betrayal. But I just feel like this heartache in you, old. And I feel like you have finally shifted that energy, that you have more opened yourself up to receiving. I feel like you have moved out of the I'm in cocoon place because I need to protect and heal myself into a place that you are opening up and experiencing life in the world in a much better place. And so enjoy it, drink from it, use your discernment in everything that you do, be mindful and of interactions that you have, and please love yourself and use your love for yourself to create boundaries so that you do not have to experience that hurt and pain again. Okay. Okay, and so I'm assuming that that's our Ahura, and she said something that I don't know. All right, hang on a second. You know, I love when people like send me stuff. Okay. So Ahura, if that's you, English. I'm not an alien entity, only speak English. Sorry, I'm just teasing you. Just teasing you. And it's James Arthur Yanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio. He's here live with me. And so for years, I was a regular guest on Feet to the Fire Radio with the Black Knight of Talk Radio. And he's here with us. So cool. Hey, James, so nice to see you here. And Amy's here. She says, hi, Dr. Rita. Happy Thursday. May I have a number 2 reading tonight, please? Thank you. You sure can. All right, Amy. Interesting. All right, Amy, that's your card for today. Interesting. So, Amy, and I hope this doesn't sound weird, but I feel like you have finally received validation for things that you've said, for your positioning on things. So as an example, and this could be it, but I'm just going to use it as an example. So let's say you suggest to people that the lines in the skies are not contrails, but they're chemtrails, and talk about the health impact of chemtrails versus just a contrail. And, for years, everyone's like, oh, that Amy, she's just like a weird old conspiracy theorist. However, it's a fact. And you've just been validated that what you've been saying and what you've been promoting actually has value and actually has merit. So it's kind of funny. You keep showing me this image of yourself and you have like this tiara on and you're like, all right, not that big, but it just feels good. And it feels like you're moving out of being like that crazy lady into, I don't know, it just feels good not being the crazy lady anymore. So whether this has to do with a conspiracy theory or like something you've been telling your kids or whatever, I just feel like a position that you've held for a very long time that other people thought were out there, it is finally being accepted as truth. And it feels good to you. So good. Yay. And again, if these readings are making sense to you and resonating, I would love the feedback. All right, now there's my regular Ahura, and she says, hello, Dr. Rita, please help me with your wisdom revelation. Number 3, thank you indeed. Blessings and cheers to you. Sure things. right, Ahura, what are we going to get? Ew. Okay. That's your card for today. So, Unar, okay, I don't predict the future, but when I look at this card, and I'm going to hold it up, I don't know if it'll focus that good. If you have any plan on going home at this point in time, do not do it. Do not do it. Can I be clear? You know, and maybe what's coming up in this card, I feel like you have feelings about what is going on, you know, around the world. And I feel like, you know, there's hurt and pain inside of you. I feel like there is a need and a longing on your part to connect. And that is very understandable. But my feeling is don't let that need and desire to connect get you to travel. Sorry, I'm just saying, All right, let's see. And then she says, "Cheers to you, Dr. Rita. You look fantastic. Love you. Love you too, Ahura." All right. All right. And then Dawn says, "Well, Dr. Rita, will you call my entity a demon? At first, I'd say yes, not now, but I still can't figure out who it is that's still here. I don't think they're just demons. Maybe they are just people." And Dawn, no, I would not say that your entity is a demon. Because it doesn't enter your body. And as I'm going to be very specific with you. So as you have been shifting your energy from being like a total Debbie Downer in a very negative thought environment and raising that vibration more and more each week, which I'm so proud of you about, it makes it so that the entity isn't right there in your space anymore. And so that's one of the reasons that I just keep focusing on that part about where your energy is, because if your energy is in a good space, that means or your energy is in a good space, that means the entity can't own it and they can't try to manipulate you. You know, so you might get to a place where it goes away because you're not feeding it. You're just starving the demon. Or the entity. You're just putting it on a diet. But no, I would not call it a demon at all. I mean, is it kind of yucky? Yeah. You know, does it want to feed off of a crappy energy? Yeah. But is it a demon? You know, like has little horns and a tail and a little pitchfork and is like running around going, "Hey, Don." No. You know, people have this image of what demons are, or what demons look like. And I just completely disagree with that stereotype of them. Okay. So ERRT Radio says, "Wow, interesting topic, Dr. Rita." Well, you're so welcome there, Don, or ERRT Radio. All right, so let's see. And then Black Knight of Talk Radio says, "I think there's a big difference between ghosts and aliens." It's like, you think? I mean, I have to tell you, when I heard Vance make that comment, I just shook my head like, you know, JD, I think you're a really smart guy, but what you just said was one of the most ignorant comments I think I've heard from an intellectual person. But what I find fascinating is if you sit there and actually listen to a number of the talking heads, especially lately, because it's demon everything, when it comes to the idea of demons, they are so uneducated and they only can look at the world from one perspective, and there's only one book, and this is what the book says. And if it's outside of the book, it doesn't exist. Kind of have some issues with that. Oh, thank you, ERRT Radio. So remember, guys, next week I will not be here. I will be on vacation, having fun, going to listen. I mean, even though they're all like ghostly, dead, non-corporeal spirits, but the Grateful Dead, even though it's like a, make-believe band, but it'll still be a lot of fun. Okay, thank you, ERRT Radio. And then we have Lauren. Is that my Lauren? Hi, Lauren. Okay, so I'm just going to say it is, all right, so hi, Lauren. It's too late for you to get a reading today, but I would love for you to come back and get a reading. I'm going to take Jess's reading, and Jess, you are going to be my last for today because it's getting to be that time. And she says, hi, Dr. Rita, your hair looks great. Thank you. May I please have a reading number 3? And you sure can. All right, Jess. Uh-oh. You got a mask card. That means there's something you don't want to deal with or look at, but okay, that makes sense to me. Okay, so this is a really great card, but I'm getting a different interpretation. So I am going to say that this is the card I'm going to read and is your clearing card. So Jess, let's see what's going on. So I get the impression that you are in a situation right now that is just seeming overwhelming. That's the feeling that I'm getting from this card, is overwhelming. And you're really not knowing what to do with it. I feel like okay. So when I bring in the mask card, like, why is that guy there? What I'm feeling is that when you look like, okay, well, I feel like I need to go here, and you're hitting that overwhelm, and it's kind of like, you're going down the streets and someone's got their bright lights on, and you're like, I can't do it. That's kind of the energy that I'm getting from you with relationship to this thing. But what I'm feeling is, if you kind of ground, if you relax, if you feel into it, like energetically feel into it, maybe do some journaling, do things that will bring your energy down in relationship to this situation. I feel like, yeah, it's going to be some work, but it's not going to be nearly as hard as you're kind of building it up in your mind. And I'm going to say you're really building it up in your mind, and you're really building it up in your mind. How's that? Anyway, so let's see what else people have to say. So Unar says, as far as aliens, I believe they are coming from underground and not from space. I agree with you about demons. Love your story. So interesting. I mean, I do believe that there are aliens that live in underground bases. So there's that too. Okay. All right. So Jessica, I'm sorry, you're going to have to come back next week to get a reading. Okay. Got to get Lauren. Got to come back next week. Come a little earlier. ERT Radio says, well, once right again, on point. I've been working on every clear morning. I record the sunrise, then make a song in Suno and post it for some joyful feelings. Cool. Christine says, thank you. It makes sense. Okay, so you guys, see, this is why you're supposed to go and jump the line, because there's all of you here that I'm not going to get to, but you could have had a chance if you jumped the line. Just saying. All right, so let's see. Then Dawn says, yes, Dr. Rita, for some reason over the years, I've been trying to find Donald again. Yeah, I hear that. Okay, so Gizmo, again, I mean, you put in for a reading, need to come earlier or jump the line. Same with you, Punja, need to come earlier or jump the line. All right, let's see. All right. Anyway, guys, there's just a lot going on in here. And I am going to sign out for tonight. Again, I will not be here next Thursday, but you will be in my heart and I will be thinking about you. And so just send me good energy that I have like an extra good time while I'm like dancing and rocking and having a good time. Anyway, till next time, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Thursday Night Live. Be blessed.